I became a target largely for several reasons. When I was a journalist, and they don't trust journalists, they don't believe in the independence of the press, I was available. I was on the streets and going about my business, while most Westerners had fled Beirut. There were indications later that they thought I was a spy, which is not terribly surprising. I wasn't, of course, but who else goes around asking questions and getting in the wrong places? And of course, I was part of a general roundup of Americans and Westerners, Frenchmen, that they were trying to build stock up so they could trade them for some of their colleagues who were being held in prison in Kuwait. Well, the strange thing was I didn't fear captivity enough while I was working there. That was the problem. I became too arrogant. I thought that I was good at my job, and it was an important job, and I wanted to continue to do it long after I should probably have taken more thought for my own safety, obviously. Inside, well, once they've taken you, there's little to be afraid of except death, and you have no control over that. We didn't think they'd really kill us anyway, because there's no use for a dead hostage. The problem was if you became ill, you had no doctor, no access to medicine, or if one of these young men, who were all armed constantly, made a mistake, he could shoot you accidentally. There were a number of accidental shootings during the 7 years. Or they could just get angry at you and decide to get rid of you. But for the most part, you weren't there for them to kill. You were there to be traded. So, you just went on from day to day and hoped that nothing bad happened. I think having been a Marine for 6 years and having had a tour of duty in Vietnam, a combat tour, was certainly a kind of preparation. If it's one thing the Marine Corps will teach you very quickly, it's discipline, self-discipline, as well as survival skills, and self-control, which was very important. And those are things that I used, that I built on, to help me get through it. I was also lucky enough to have companions in my cells for most of the time, and we supported each other. In the first few months and couple of years, the guards were pretty brutal. There was a lot of beating. There was even some torture. I wasn't physically tortured, but others were. It happened. These are young men, uneducated, unsophisticated, who have had very little power in their short lives, and suddenly they are given total power over people they've been taught to believe are their enemy. So you can imagine that they took advantage of it, and they did from time to time. After some time, after a few years, it kind of calmed down a bit. We actively tried to persuade them, as a policy, that we're your captives, we're hostages. We're not criminals, and we're not here to be punished. We haven't done anything wrong. And trying to keep that attitude and trying to push that position actually did make some changes in their behavior and in our conditions. It became better. Never good, but better. When I came out, the whole world saw me sit there and say, I am determined to forgive them. That I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to hate them. That is a long process and a learning process. It's not a switch. And over the years following, I learned quite a bit about forgiveness and what it means. I'm not angry at them for the most part. I don't hate them. I don't really hate anybody except those who do evil to others. Have I forgiven them? I'm not sure. I have come to the attitude that forgiveness is about what's in me, not what's in them. I have no control over what's in them. I can only try to live my life in a way that is without anger and without hatred. All of us experience some degree of post-traumatic stress or some kind of problems related to that. We were all damaged in some ways. You can't help it after that kind of an experience. One of our group went straight into a mental hospital and never came out on his release. Another spent 10 years in and out of mental hospitals. I had the support of the AP, who brought in experts in PTSD and got both my wife and I counseling for a considerable period of time. And those gentlemen told me that it would probably take as long as I'd been held hostage to recover. And I think that was an underestimate. Have I recovered? How do I know? It is part of my life. It's never going to go away. On the other hand, it is only part of my life. And it is my job to use that experience in a way that makes the rest of my life better, not worse. This is the 30th anniversary of my kidnapping, March 16th. And, from all that time, 30 years, I have almost never remembered either the anniversary of my kidnapping or my release. Not for myself. Usually one of my friends or colleagues sends me an email or a note to remind me of it and to say that they're thinking of me, and which is very kind and sweet. But my life is full of other things and has been for quite a while. I have a lot of other things that I focus on and I concentrate on, and I really don't think about those years very often. It's not that I forget them. They're always there, and they always will be there. But they are in no way the center point of my life. I don't know how many people in your audience remember the Iran-Contra thing with Ali North and the weapons for hostages and all that very complex political stuff that blew up in the Reagan administration's face. After that, there were no negotiations for like 2 years, more than 2 years. Then along came a gentleman by the name of John Domenico Pico, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. He had negotiated an end to the first Iran-Iraq War. He had negotiated an end to the first Afghan War. And he decided that nothing was being done for the hostages in Lebanon, so he would go and see if he could do something. And he allowed himself to be kidnapped repeatedly in Beirut, knowing that the previous negotiator, Terry Waite, had been kidnapped during his negotiations, and managed to persuade our hosts that there was nothing more to be gained, that it was time to end this episode. And over the space of about a year and a half, they did. They let us go gradually until I came home in December of 91. It is a complex situation and a difficult question what to do about ISIS, ISIL, or whatever you might call them, those evil murderers. President Obama has recently ordered a reevaluation of American policies about hostage taking and negotiations. He won't allow the payment of ransom, and he says that there will be no negotiations. But there are changes that can and should be made. The policy in the past of no negotiation, no ransom paying, has been kind of spread to mean no talking. Don't talk to anybody. Don't even talk to the families of the hostages. Which is kind of a cover for doing nothing. And that is very hard on the families of the hostages. And they're quite angry about it and upset. That policy needs to be changed. We need to treat the families of hostages better. We need to provide them with help, because their lives are complicated now. When somebody's been taken, there are lots of things that become problems. And for the government to ignore them, to tell them, shut up, don't make any publicity, is neither useful nor wise. I'm hoping that in this reconsideration that those things will happen. And I also believe that the flat no negotiation should not be interpreted to mean no talking to anybody. What do you do when a hostage situation arrives in the commission of a crime, bank robbery, something? First thing you do is bring in a professional hostage negotiator. Now, he's not there to give the criminals anything. He's not likely to provide a car or a plane or anything like that. Those things don't happen. He's there to talk to the guy, to see if he can keep any violence from happening until the situation comes to an end. I see a parallel with these kinds of international hostage taking. I don't mean that ISIS or ISIL or whatever could be talked into releasing their hostages. They seem to have reached a different level of malevolence. But that there's no reason not to reach out to other people, to other groups who might have something to offer, who might have information to offer. There's no reason not to even talk to ISIS, at least for the purpose of trying to understand what it is they want, where they're going with this policy. What is it they want? If we don't understand them, we're not likely to be able to formulate an answer that will work. So I think we need to understand that no negotiation should not mean no discussion or no talking. I've taught at several universities. I love my students. I call my classes my antidote to the morning paper. Every time I'm getting discouraged by what's going on in the world, I look at my class, which is full of bright young people who are really determined to become journalists and go out there and find the truth, as difficult as that may be. And it's my job to help prepare them for that. And I learn from them. I learn lots of things from them. The most useful thing I learned as a teacher, besides the fact that teaching is a thing that you have to learn, just because you know the subject doesn't mean you can teach. I took a seminar some years back during an education symposium. It was called Teaching with Your Mouth Shut. And of course what they were trying to teach you to do is listen as well as talk. And it's been the most useful thing I think I've learned. I just enjoy talking to bright young minds of people who care enough about the world and what's going on in it to want to be international journalists. These are not people who are just head buried in what they're doing. They actually want to learn about the world. And that's very encouraging. Journalism is changing very rapidly because of the internet, because of social media, for a lot of reasons. And it's to the point now where all I can do is help identify the changes for them. I can't even offer them solutions. They're going to have to come up with the solutions. It's not going to be old guys like me. And that's exciting. That's interesting.